mind-body relationship, where we talk about the mind, the body, and the relationship. Hi there, my name is Emerald Hill, and joining me is Dr. Laurie Ponsford Hill.
Hello, Emerald. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about something that we're calling finding your voice.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
And I think that most probably is something that was very important in regards to doing stand-up comedy.
Oh, for sure. If you don't have a voice, what's the point of going on stage?
Oh, exactly. So how did you find your voice?
I guess I already described my experience in grade school, which was very oppressive towards having a voice, you know?
You know what? That's really, really important, right? Because girls have a tendency to lose their voice, and then they find it again.
Oh, yeah?
Right? So little girls, when I think of little girls, I think of screaming. Running around, being very loud, screaming, very high-pitched voices, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens as school occurs and girls get older, they have a tendency to go silent.
Really? Interesting.
And then they start to find their voice again as it is they get older in those teenage years.
Wow, well, that's really great.
Yeah. So having a voice is actually really, really important. And so the question is, once it is that you lose your voice, how do you find it again?
That's a really good point. Yeah, and I think for me, I had always been interested in performance. And I think using performance, because I used to be really into the dramatics, and I used to basically kind of express myself through finding very sad monologues and writing very sad monologues and, you know, reading them out loud. And it was kind of like a way for me to understand how to communicate how I was feeling.
Okay.
And so finally, when I started to really research into comedy and being funnier, it was like a way of communicating when I'm having a good time, which is very important as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess when it was, you know, come time to actually do a performance, and then the positive feedback that I got from that performance kind of instilled in me the fact that I have an ability to speak. And that it's good to speak, and that people are actually willing to listen. And if they're not, you're not actually attached to those people, and you have the ability to go and find other people who are.
Interesting. Yeah. So kind of a combination of two things. One, standing up in front of others, right? Being seen. And then the other thing about being heard.
Right.
That you actually have to find your voice in order to learn how to project your voice to the audience.
Oh, yeah. I used to have such a problem with basically speaking like this all of the time. And like being okay with the fact that people couldn't hear me. Maybe even, you know, speaking like that so that people can't hear me, and so they'll give up and just leave me alone. Yeah. And it happened a couple of times where people would be like, you need to work on that, because it's, you know, it's really frustrating to try and talk to you, and then you say something, and I know you're saying something that's probably interesting or funny or something, but I can't hear what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah. Because, you know, even maintaining eye contact is a very vulnerable thing to do. Right? So that it's a combination of several different things, right? Actually being able to look into somebody else's eyes and to talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know I did the 3-minute thesis at Laurier. And the one thing that I found was that it was very, very hard for the first time ever to stand up and look at the audience.
Right.
Very scary.
Yeah, it's very different when you're like in front of people and there aren't blinding lights in front of you.
Yeah, and you can see them.
Yeah.
And you can see them looking at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is scary.
Yeah. So what were the techniques you learned in regards to Well, having a voice, projecting, making sure that people were paying attention to you.
Well, like a really great technique that I learned was actually when I went to the New York Conservatory for Dramatic Arts, and I had my first ever voice coach. And something that he was very adamant about was that the voice comes from deep inside the body.
Oh, okay.
So breathing techniques like this one, where it's very loud and it forces you to like use your body and your voice at the same time as you take a deep breath and then you go ma.
Oh wow.
And it kind of like builds up into your body, and then when you release it, it really sort of engages, you know, your voice, and it kind of forces you to listen to yourself and spread and make space in the room.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah, I think that that's really important, right? Because the one thing that happens, especially when it is that you are afraid or worried or, you know, concerned or whatever that might be in an uncomfortable situation or a stressful situation, is the one thing that happens is you stop breathing.
For sure.
Yeah. And so you find yourself either holding your breath, right?
Yeah.
So that nobody's actually really being bothered by you or paying attention to you, right? Trying to be as small as possible. Or what happens is that you shallow breathe.
Yeah. Hyperventilate.
Yeah. So you're just breathing into your upper chest as opposed to breathing down into your lower tummy. So that's a technique that forces you into engaging your breath all the way from down and then bringing it up and then out.
Yes, it's very easy to talk wispy, like with just using the breath up here. But then when you talk, like even now, like when you hear me talk, it's very in my lower voice box.
Yes, very much so. So the other aspect is that you can actually change the sound of your voice.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. So how did you do that?
Well, it was very interesting. I actually watched Margaret Thatcher, the movie Margaret Thatcher, who was played by Meryl Streep. And I had wanted to change my voice since I was in high school. I wanted it to be lower. I wanted it to be more assertive. And so what I learned from watching that movie is that you can do it. And the whole point of it is practicing talking, just talking very low and like being able to listen to yourself at that low. So a lot of the techniques that they did with Margaret Thatcher apparently was going, and like getting your voice lower. And at first it was very strange for me to practice talking like this because you kind of have to go way over. So a lot of the time I would practice talking really, really, really low.
Wow.
And then finally it was able to find a happy medium with my own voice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I think that's also really important in regards to finding your voice, right? How do you want to sound? When you talk, what do others actually really come away with? Right? So there actually really is a way to change yourself in order to have the voice that you want to have.
It's actually interesting when, like in my first year of college, I was struggling still with my wispy voice, and I found that people were okay with interrupting me when I had my wispy voice. But now currently when I speak, it's not very often that people interrupt me. And when they do, I just keep going.
Oh, wow.
Because you can't really ignore the sound of my voice when it's this low and it's this, you know, projecting and articulate. And then it kind of like jars them into realizing like, oh, I'm being rude. Because she's still talking.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Quite literally. Yeah. Well, and that's another area that, you know, are articulating.
Very much so. Like, it doesn't matter how loud you are or how, like, low your voice is. Like, no one's going to be able to know what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true, right? So it is really important to practice pronunciating.
for sure. That's definitely another voice technique that we learned. Getting poems that sound, that have those, every word starts with P. Pretty pink partner in the park.
Right. Forcing yourself to open your mouth when it is that you're talking so that people can understand what it is that you're saying. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, that's really another important topic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So there's two ways in which projection works, right? One is that you are actually really talking to somebody else so that you're wanting your words to actually really reach them. The other way is to do the exact opposite, where you're not wanting your words to actually really reach them because you're afraid or whatever that might be. So what happens is that people have a tendency when they're in that position to start to talk into themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when somebody is doing that, it's like they're talking within themselves.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why it's really great. It's almost like when you're playing a sport and you have to look at where you want the ball to go.
Yeah.
And so when you're speaking, it's really great with like the stage, because you can see right at the back of the room where you want your voice to end up against the wall.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And it's very interesting because it's like sports psychology or whatever.
Yeah.
And acting. But I think a really great thing to just practice is to find, farther and farther away points that you can practice speaking to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So we have a meditation that we're going to be putting online so that if you would actually really like to start to concentrate on finding your own voice, key into that meditation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Laurie, for talking to me about finding your voice.
No problem, Emerald. It sounds like you have found yours.
I have. Finally.
Finally.
And thank you so much for tuning in. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, stay subscribed, and we'll see you next time.
All right. And bye for now.
Bye. Okay. You're leaving right when I turn everything on?
I'm pacing.
Hi there, welcome. Sorry. Hi there, welcome back to Mind, Body... Sorry.